Welcome to Growth Island, your go-to podcast on how to be the best version of yourself. Now, let's join your host, Mess Freeze, as he interviews high performers and experts in nutrition, meditation, exercise, relationships, business, general health, and life's bigger mysteries.
Welcome to today's episode of Growth Island. My name is Mads Friis and I got the pleasure of being your host tonight. Today I got Daniel Espeland in the studio. He is a good friend. He is a kick-ass biohacker that I often go to discuss the newest research that I found. He is working as the acting COO of Fungus DK, which is the biggest catering company in Denmark at the moment. And then he knows a lot about mushrooms. Something that we've been discussing for a few months now, where I'm trying to learn more about it. So I'm really excited about getting the chance to interview Daniel today about why is it that mushrooms are so interesting and how do you use it as a biohacker. So Daniel, welcome very much today.
Thank you very much. I love to spread the gospel of mushrooms. So thank you for hosting me.
Thanks. So just by starting out, can you tell a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yes, I am an Englishman in New York, as a Norwegian in Copenhagen, and 30 years old. Been living here for 6 years, so I feel more or less accustomed to it. And traveling through life, focusing on good food, personal development, and spiritual enlightenment, I guess.
Cool. So I know you well. So I know you've been doing so many different biohacking things, from going on a 10-day fast to get over a disease in Indonesia to a lot of other things. But today we're going to be focused mostly on mushrooms. So can you tell me, why is mushrooms so interesting? What got you interested in that?
For me, I think it started out with me turning vegetarian. Or more plant-based in my diet many years ago, and found that mushrooms was a very interesting kind of meat substitute. It has high nutritional values. It's tasty. It has good texture. It is it's easy to manipulate in the sense of like making it into different things. You can use it for a variety of things. So that was probably where it started out.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I've tried to go more vegan as well, or vegetarian, and I find it a bit challenging finding the good sources, or what you would say, the good recipes to make sure you get the proper food. So what is it in the protein level, for example? That's often what you hear, like, I can't go vegetarian, I need my protein. So what's the deal about that?
I think with regards to protein, it's a big misconception. It's one of the big myths, I would say, of general nutrition, that you don't get enough protein. If you get enough general calories in your diet, you will also, and you eat whole food, you will also get enough protein, because even fruits contain somewhere between 6 to 10% protein, and that's enough for a grown person to maintain the muscle mass you need. So in general, you can eat only fruits and you will still get enough proteins. But of course, if you want to build your muscles, or in general, there are protein is not just protein. Protein is a lot of amino acids, and some amino acids are better than others. So of course you can get sufficient amount of proteins through a very plain diet of, say, potatoes. If you just eat potatoes, you could probably survive on potatoes for a year. But at some point you will have some deficiencies because you only get a certain profile of amino acids. What I think is very interesting with mushrooms, of course, there are like there are probably tens of thousands of different mushrooms that you could possibly eat that we haven't really discovered yet. But there are thousands that you can eat that we know of today.
So for someone that doesn't know so much about mushrooms,
Yeah.
I remember that we talked a few weeks ago and I was like, yeah, I'm trying to get my mushrooms. I got these white ones and I also got these brown ones that are traditional in like the Danish supermarket at least. And you told me that's probably not the best mushrooms to get, Mads. So what's the deal about that?
Okay, so the most cultivated mushroom in Europe and the US is the general button mushroom, which is the champignon.
Yeah.
And it is, for example, portobello mushrooms are also just a different type, selective breeding of the same type of mushroom. And they are easy to grow and they are easy to cook and people know them and they are very convenient. And I don't know, I actually haven't looked into why they became like the staple mushroom, but they're not very interesting in a culinary sense, I think at least. And in terms of nutrition, they have very low nutritional value. And if you don't cook it, I know it's served in salad bars and stuff like that, uncooked button mushrooms, and they are neurotoxic to eat if you don't cook it. So
So for the people that don't know what that means, what does it mean to be neurotoxin?
A neurotoxin is something that is toxic to your neurons, so your brain cells. If you eat uncooked champignons or button mushrooms, of course, if you have a bit of drizzle in your salad, it won't have a big effect, but you might get a headache. But it basically means that you're killing off your neurons, and of course you don't want to do it. Same with alcohol; it's a neurotoxin as well, and you can usually sense that the day after drinking that you've done something not quite good with to your head.
So eating a lot of the champignon, as we call them in Danish, like eating them raw, let's say I ate like 10 of them, that could actually give me a big headache and feeling bad the day after.
Yeah, and it would, most significantly from my understanding is that it would affect your short-term memory. Yeah. Because it would break down like the weakest bonds of your neurons. So like new synapses before they're properly formed, before you've had enough repetition of some knowledge. So I think your short-term memory would be most affected by it.
Cool. So how do I get into the good mushrooms? So now knowing that I shouldn't eat the traditional ones, how do I get the full benefit of these mushrooms that you've been so enthusiastic about?
Yeah, I would say to start with, how to get them is quite straightforward, at least if you live in Copenhagen. You go to a fairly decent supermarket, and I personally usually shop at Superbrugsen, and they always have like a variety of maybe 5 or 6 different mushrooms, which I don't think is very, there are so many types you could have, but the cultivation aspect of this is not really that widespread yet. But you go there, you find my personal favorite for cooking is the oyster mushrooms, and Shiitake is a very common one. That's actually the most cultivated mushroom in the world. It's quite expensive to buy here to buy it fresh here in Denmark because we don't have a tradition of cooking with Shiitake. But it's a staple. Cooking fund from Shiitake is like staple in Chinese and Korean and Japanese cuisine, with miso soup and ramen soup and all kinds of stocks. Everything usually has some soy and some Shiitake fun.
So do we grow the Shiitake here in Europe, or where is it grown?
It's there are some specialty mushroom growers in Denmark who does it.
Yeah.
And the prices I've seen just from moving here, I mean, and starting to look for these types, it's probably dropped, like the prices have dropped probably 50%, 70%, something like that, from being very exclusive and very seasonal to now they probably grow it in some greenhouse style facilities. So I would say those are the most common ones.
And why are those so good? So do they also release a bit of toxins in the brain if you don't cook them, or can you eat them raw? Or
I think you can eat them raw with no significant worry, but they're not very tasty.
No.
And in general, like a general rule, all fungus should be cooked, as to not just for like safety, but the beneficial aspects usually come out when cooked. Yeah, the bioavailability of the positive aspects of them come out when you cook them. So I would say always cook mushrooms.
Yeah. And just for people that don't know, fungus. So for a lot of people that'll be a new word. For me it was, at least for not too long ago, that I figured out it was not. Can you tell like what's a fungi and why is it not a fruit or something else?
A fungi is any type of like it's a fungus, any type of spore spread organism.
And all mushrooms are fungi.
Yes.
And it's not the same as a vegetable or something else.
No.
It's a different category.
Yeah. So you have animals, you and me, you have insect is a type of animal, and mammals and birds, and you have that whole kingdom of animals, and you have the kingdom of plants, and that is trees to root vegetables to anything growing from photosynthesis and CO2. And then you have a third kingdom of organisms, which is, and these are complex organisms. The third is fungus. And fungus is growing as we do. We can't live from the rays of the sun alone. We need to break down biomass, basically. And the same with fungus. They also break down biomass. And they are, without fungus, there would be no planet Earth as we know it, because they convert any biomass or break it down into basic building blocks.
Cool. So going back to the health benefits of some of these mushrooms, can you dig a little bit deeper into that? So what is it some of these mushrooms do?
Yeah, so we can, we started out with Shiitake and oyster mushrooms. These two are very good for, on a more broad level, mushrooms have polysaccharides, which is, a saccharide is a sugar, so carbohydrates, and a sugar type of carbohydrate. You also have starch, and you also have like regular carbon.
And starch, that's often what you get in potatoes, for example.
Yes. And they're all, I think starch is also a type of a polysaccharide, but it's not easily digested. So for example, potatoes, you should cook them. They also are bad for your health if you don't cook it. But sweet potatoes, they're not, but you can eat a sweet potato raw without it being dangerous, but it's still, the bioavailability is very low, because it's a poly means complex, and saccharide is a sugar. So it's a complex sugar structure, and your body has a really hard time breaking it down into basically bite-sized pieces. And the same with mushrooms, you cook it. However, mushrooms, like the polysaccharides of mushrooms, they have, not all of them, some specific types. For example, Shiitake, oyster mushrooms, which are the general two very health beneficial cooking mushrooms. They have specific polysaccharides as a Orange has vitamin C, and carrots have beta carotene, or vitamin A, also called. And you have different types of fruits and vegetables have different types of minerals. Different types of mushrooms have different types of polysaccharides, and some of them are very beneficial for us. For example, Shiitake has some types of polysaccharides that are good for our skin. So it helps the skin, or helps the body basically run the skin process. Also liver cleansing. And in general, you can see that mushrooms, for example, Shiitake is very good for cleansing. It helps, in general, all the cleansing processes in your body. With oyster mushrooms, it's very good for restorative processes. So it gives you like a glowing skin, glowing hair. It gives you better sleep. It gives you it relaxes your body, and kind of enhances your what's called restorative processes. Then you have other mushrooms that are actually grown wild in Denmark, that you can't eat, but they grow on birch trees. One is called Chaga. This is the most antioxidant abundant organism there is ever found. It has something like 10 times as much antioxidants as the Acai berry of Brazil, which is like heralded as the king
superfood.
The king of superfood. And this one has 10 times the amount. And the reason is that it infects a birch tree, which is a birch tree is very medicinal. It has high antibacterial properties. And when this fungus infects the tree, it takes maybe 5 to 10 years in a kind of a wrestling match where the fungus tries to break down the tree, and the tree produces defensive compounds, and the mushroom basically absorbs these compounds. And after a struggle of, I don't know, it can take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, the mushroom wins basically, and the tree starts to die, and the mushroom reproduces, and then it grows a big blob out of the side of the tree, and this is the fruit body of the mushroom. And you can take that, cut it off. It tastes terrible. You can't cook it because it's almost like a lump of tree.
Yeah.
But you can take that, you can grind it down into powder, and you can extract the polysaccharides from it. And this has immense health benefits if you drink or you take this as a supplement. I do that. I have this extract at home every time I feel sick. I wake up and I feel like I have a snoo, or I don't feel like completely on top. I take this as a morning remedy, and I feel great. I very seldom get sick, and if I get close to it, I take one of these and it goes away.
Cool. Where can we normal mortals that don't know about mushrooms find that? That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. I usually go with a company called Four Sigmatic.
Yeah. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Four Sigmatic. And
I know that, both you and me are big fans of Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
And he has lauded Four Sigmatic. That's where I heard about that from. So he has like a voucher coupon, or like an own, just search Four Sigmatic and Tim Ferriss and you'll get a discount.
Cool.
They do coffee with these supplements, different types of mushrooms. They have this Chaga. You have Reishi, which is really good for sleep, and also for immune system. It's basically for your immune system, and you're also like restorative. They have one mushroom type called lion's mane, which I really look forward to cultivation in Denmark, because it's also a delicious mushroom to cook, but you can't really buy it anywhere.
I've heard that name before about that mushroom. So why is that so special?
Lion's mane has has properties for your brain. It's really, really good for your myelin production. And myelin is basically the gel or the coating that encases a synapses, like when there's a new neuron produced, before it forms as a kind of a permanent link. The body or the brain produces a kind of a gel that covers the neuron, and this is called myelin. And it's, for example, people that have epilepsy. The reason for epilepsy is the body can't produce sufficient amounts of myelin, and when people with epilepsy get stressed and gets kind of up, they kind of strain their brain, and the synapses kind of start to fall apart because they're not encased in sufficient amounts of myelin, and they can get a seizure. So, for example, this lion's mane has shown tremendous potential for treating like epilepsy, not seizures. I don't think it works instantaneous, but having that as a supplement in your diet. Also, if you get a concussion, is really good to kind of restore your brain functions. Migraine, any type of brain-related disease, then lion's mane is tremendous.
Do we know anything about Alzheimer, Parkinson with lion's mane as well? Do you know if there's been any research for that?
Not on top of my head.
Cool.
But I would presume that, because that's also kind of these same functions, starting to tremble.
Yeah.
And I mean, the most for example, Parkinson and Alzheimer's, the most correlated kind of thing for that is lack of sleep.
Yeah.
So there I would recommend Reishi, which is another type grown wild, and it grows wild in Scandinavia, in Siberia, and
where do you find these mushrooms that are not normal in the supermarket? So you can get powder, that's easier to order.
Yeah.
Which ones are good enough as a powder version, and which ones do you need as the dried version or the fresh version?
That's a really good question, actually, because that's something that I've found out, not the hard way, but the kind of the inefficient way. I ordered a lot of mushroom powder some time ago, and wanted to see effect of that versus extract. So one is powder, basically dried mushroom ground into powder, and the other was a dual extract of a mushroom. And the powder, for most of these medicinal types of mushrooms, the powder just dried up. It doesn't do much because, again, you need to cook it. And for these, they are, I mean, very complex structures. So you really need to break down the plant, or not the plant matter, because that's not a plant, but the biomatter to get access to the beneficial compounds. And that's done through a dual extract process, which is you soak the powder for maybe 1 to 2 months in alcohol, which I'm doing right now with lion's mane and with Chaga and with Shiitake. I'm trying to do a dual extract to see if it's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then after maybe 2 months, you basically take it out, put all the matter into take the alcohol and put it aside. You put all the matter and put it into a cheesecloth, and you press out, so you only have like the dry matter back, and then you put that and cook it, like boil it for maybe 12 hours, and then again put it through a cheesecloth, rinse it out, and take all the boiled water and all the alcohol and mix it, and then you can boil it down into a syrup.
Okay.
And that's the extract.
Yeah.
And that's a dual extract, and that gives you the highest concentration of the beneficial compounds, the polysaccharides. And it's quite expensive if you buy it the dual extract. So for example, you buy pure dual extract of Four Sigmatic, you pay maybe, I think they are maybe $1.50 per satchel. So that's one cup is like, 10 kroners Danish. Which is quite expensive if you want to take 1 or 2 of those a day, and you want to take maybe 5 different mushroom extracts per day. Then it becomes quite hefty. Yeah.
Cool. Are there any other mushrooms that we should know about that are good to eat? We're not going to talk about the more, what people often hear about mushrooms, they think something else, like how you change your perception of the world. But today we're talking about the health benefits of them.
Yeah. I would say another type is Maitake.
Yeah.
Can be found in Asian food stores. It's a bit similar to Shiitake. And it's also a very nice culinary mushroom. Let me think. Turkey tail is another one. And it's that one is not that good for cooking, as far as I know, but it's also very good. Like, it has very good medicinal properties.
Where would you recommend people to go look for mushrooms or learn about mushrooms?
I would say the number one source in the world is a guy named Paul Stamets. He is by far the Mr. Fun guy. And he does both medicinal mushrooms. He produces medicinal mushrooms, so all of these types, and does dual extract of them and make pills out of it. And he also sells spores if you want to grow it yourself. He sells grow kits. He is he's been contracted by US NSA and Home Defense, and for 30-40 years, I think.
Cool.
Because he has such a deep understanding of this organism. And it could also be used for, you can grow things in petri dishes, and you can definitely grow very dangerous types of strains of mushrooms to infect a population potentially. And he has, I would recommend, he has a podcast with Joe Rogan, where they talk about both medicinal mushrooms and also magic mushrooms. He's also a big proponent of that.
Yeah.
And
how do we find that podcast?
Joe Rogan Experience.
Rogan.
Yeah. And you search for mushroom, or you search for Paul Stamets. That is PaulStamet.
Cool.
S.
I'll find that and put that in the show notes as well for people to find.
That is 3 hours of wonderful knowledge. He is by far the most knowledgeable. So I would say those two. And then also you have Four Sigmatic has a nice website. It's a Finnish company. The founder has also written a book called Healing Mushrooms, which is wonderful. Paul Stamets has probably written 15 books on all types of mushrooms. The best one I would recommend is Running Mycelium. And it's about how that's probably for another non-biohacker related episode of mushrooms, how everything is connected underground where we can't see anything. Everything is connected through the roots of mushrooms, which is called mycelium. It's the foundation of forests and ecosystems.
Cool. So apart from eating all these mushrooms, do you have any other routines that you do to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I'm always trying to tweak my routine, but I've found now something that works very well. One is I always finish my shower with 100 seconds of cold water. I've been doing that for almost 2 years, and it's more refreshing than a cup of coffee. I do every morning half an hour of meditation and 5 minutes of exercise. I journal a bit.
What kind of meditation do you do?
Right now, I'm kind of learning to do chakra meditation.
And what does that mean?
That means focusing on energy points in the body from root chakra, which is the base of the spine, to the crown chakra, which is top of your head. And it's basically the basis of Tantra philosophy, which says that we have some power zones or like power spots in our body that are connected to different aspects of our life, such as grounding, sexuality, loving, interconnectedness, communication. So I focus on each of these 7 points and try to basically clear them out and see them shining, so that I can go out and spread knowledge about mushrooms or good food or good health or being happy.
Yeah, cool. And then you do journaling as well?
Yeah, and there as well I haven't found like I would like to do morning pages where I just write crazily for page after page. I find it a bit hard to do, both time-wise, because when I start to write, especially if I write by hand, I can just write for half an hour and I don't seem to finish. So I write. I have this called a Daily Stoic Journal, which it's Paul Wright. What's his name? The Obstacle is the Way, and he's an author, also a friend of Tim Ferriss. Yeah, Brian Holiday, of course. He has a journal, and it's basically like half a page, focusing on like a daily question. It could be, how does your own missteps hurt yourself the most? And then I basically reflect on that for half a page in the morning, and then I do the same before I go to bed for half a page. And it's basically every day I reflect on something new, and I try to take the kind of the big view on life.
So does the book have these different questions? So a new question for each day, or do you come up with a script with the questions?
No, it has a question for every day and a topic for every week.
Interesting.
So this week's topic is love.
Cool.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah. How you're doing stuff that's hurting yourself with love, or how you're doing stuff that's good, I'm guessing. Yeah. Cool. I'll find a note for that as well, so people can look into that. Any other routines that you do? That's already a fair bit.
Yeah. I have right now. I have some mantras.
Yeah.
That I say throughout the day. I do that 3 times a day.
And what does a mantra mean?
I repeat it could be a meaningless phrase like Huma Shiba, something like that, which is like maybe a more meditation mantra. I have I try to reprogram my subconsciousness, where I've always kind of struggled to make money and had that as a kind of a mental obstacle. And I've had a little bit of training with a woman called Mother Ocean, which you've also met. And she gave me a mantra relating to this, which is money is nothing. I manifest abundance.
Yeah.
So I say that 13 times every day, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And then I also say I love myself 13 times, 3 times a day. And then I say everything is exactly as it should be.
Yeah.
13 times, 3 times a day.
Cool.
And I usually do that with my morning journaling, and then before eating lunch, and then before writing my night or evening journal.
Interesting. That's something a lot of people have done through history.
Yeah.
And you heard that for some people it sounds a bit weird, for other people it makes total sense. And once you try it, for most of the people I've heard, it's really helpful. And it's, gives a good feeling.
Yeah.
Cool. So if people want to find you after today, what's a way to get in contact with you? Anywhere to follow you and so on? I know you're not super much on social media, so...
Easiest is probably like email, my private email, which is daniel.espeland@gmail.com.
Cool.
And LinkedIn maybe. I guess LinkedIn, I'm a professional guy.
Yeah. So the LinkedIn profile might be a place to find you as well, to connect.
Yeah.
If someone has similar interest or more curious to hear about some of your journey.
Yeah.
So this was just a little part of your biohacking journey and the stuff you've done.
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn is probably the best. Then we can steer it from there to more esoteric communication channels.
Yeah, cool. And so if you had to recommend just one mushroom for people to go buy tomorrow, which one would that be?
That would be oyster mushrooms.
Yeah. Cool. So oyster mushroom.
It's just like chicken. Like you tear it up and it has the consistency of chicken. It's really good for your sleep. I mean, you've had it a bit earlier.
Yeah.
And it really puts like your body into calm state. It's good for your supper.
Yeah.
And then you can have a nice sleep afterwards.
Cool. I'm tracking my sleep, so I'll see if I get more deep sleep after this session. That's going to be interesting. But Daniel, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot of new stuff about mushrooms. There's more stuff that I have to try, and I'm sure the listeners out there will learn something too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Island. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes on how to be the best version of yourself. And if you found this show helpful, then please leave us a review so more people will learn about the podcast, or share it with a friend who can benefit from it too. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.